Because the reason I ask is that I anecdotally hear Muslims leaving this department because of this administration's perceived hostility towards the Muslim community or the LGBTQ community leaving.
We have not seen much of a difference. I know I've looked at the gender issues, but we do keep an eye on that to make sure that if there's anything that goes wrong. Again, it's trying to understand what the barriers are.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are breaking down a clip from a committee hearing that really shows you the difference between political theater and actual governance. You just saw Representative Ilhan Omar, one of the loudest voices in the so-called squad, trying to grill State Department and USAID officials. She starts off with this premise that the Trump administration is somehow detrimental to women solely because they don't agree with her specific policies on family planning. She's trying to set a trap. She's not asking for information. She's looking for a gotcha moment to put on Twitter. She wants these witnesses to admit that the administration hates women. But hang tight, because we're going to watch the full clip, and you're going to see something amazing. You're going to see career professionals politely, calmly, and factually dismantle her entire narrative. Let's watch the rest, and then we'll break down exactly how her interrogation falls apart.
I wanted to chat a little bit with you, Mr. Nutt. One of USAID's publicly stated missions is that the promotion of greater economic opportunities for women throughout the world. But in reality, the work that this administration has done and some of the policies that it's pushing for has been detrimental to women's prosperity and empowerment in a whole host of ways. There's a wealth of academic research showing us that gains in women's education and employment can be attributed to increasing access to contraceptions. That access has given millions of women control over their future and better enable them to participate in workforce and contribute both to local and global economies. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us how the policy priority that we have and our mission makes sense in regards to the proposed cuts to family planning that your department is putting forth.
I have not been briefed on that particular matter at this point. I know the administration, the administrators has been pushing an initiative to push out the implementation and the programs of USAID down to the more local level and to the betterment of people in country. But I can't speak to your immediate question, but I can take that question for the record.
Wonderful. Ms. Leavitt, did you have a?
As my colleague has answered, we'll gladly follow up with many details for that, details that will demonstrate the breadth and extent of our basic education programs and higher education programs around the world, and how in many cases they prioritize access to education to girls, to young women, how we advance entrepreneurial types of programs, economic livelihood types of programs in support of girls and women. So we have a wealth of programs that help advance.
No, that's well and dandy. My question was investment in family planning and the opportunities to have access to contraceptions, and how we know that that there is so much research that backs that gives families the ability to have.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're breaking down a committee hearing that perfectly shows the difference between political theater and actual governance. You're about to see Representative Ilhan Omar questioning State Department and USAID officials. But pay close attention, because this isn't really about getting answers. This is about pushing a narrative, setting traps, and looking for sound bites. Let's watch what happens when that narrative runs into facts.
Advancement when the girls and the women in the family have an ability to earn an education and enter the workforce.
And we look forward to following up with you with a detailed follow-up.
Wonderful. Ambassador, I wanted to follow up with Mr. Liu's questions earlier in diversity in hiring, promotion, and retention. You'd mentioned earlier that you wanted to take a broad definition of diversity, and I wanted to see who's included within that definition. Are we including people with disabilities? Okay. Is that a yes?
I'm sorry, Congresswoman. Yes, that is
Okay.
yes.
Does that include the LGBT community?
Yes, it does.
Does it include religious minorities?
Religious minorities are protected under the Civil Rights Code, so yes.
And are we currently collecting that data for these categories?
So the data collection is done on a volunteer basis, which has always been one of the struggles. People have to self-identify, and we do not, I believe, collect on all this. I will have to get back to you, Congresswoman, because I'm not sure about some.
Yeah. Do you
some
think
categories.
it's helpful for us to collect this data? Does that inform us in some sort of way to make sure that we are able to diversify and promote and retain people?
I think sometimes it would. For example, I chair the committee that looks at assignments to principal officer positions and deputy chief of mission positions. And one of the things we look at is diversity. Are we making sure that we have the most diverse slate of candidates for every position? Now, 12 people sit on the committee. These are senior level jobs. We tend to know a lot of people. We're not that big. So sometimes we know somebody's diverse, but then it may show up on their profile because they've opted not to do that. So we've left it up to the individual. I think sometimes that could hurt the statistics, of course. Yeah. And sometimes it's just someone at the table who says, listen, I know that this candidate is a diverse candidate. But we do not have something in place.
Yeah.
I'm sort of on the fence. I don't want to necessarily push somebody, but yes, does it hurt people sometimes? And obviously we don't have a really accurate record.
No, I appreciate that, and I hope that we're able to look at it, because the reason I ask is that I anecdotally hear Muslims leaving this department because of this administration's perceived hostility towards the Muslim community or the LGBTQ community, leaving because of that perceived hostility. And so I want to make sure that we have the relevant data in regards to retention, and see if there are ways that we can make sure that we're dealing with that as we go forth.
And those that you mentioned are some of the most difficult because it's not so obvious. And so I think that's also an issue. What I would say more generally is that our attrition rates are not very high.
Yeah.
And they are trending on historical levels. So for our entry level, I'm talking foreign service now, that's civil service,
Right.
It is 2% at the.
This is where things start to fall apart. A USAID official begins explaining how the administration supports women through education, entrepreneurship, and skills training, real, measurable empowerment. But instead of engaging with that answer, he's cut off. That's well and dandy. That line tells you everything. The answer only matters if it fits a specific political script. This isn't oversight. This is performative questioning.
Mid-levels is about 4%. Where you see the spike is when you get to the senior levels, but you have people that age out. We have a system, it's an up and out system, so they have time and class limitations, time and service limitations. We have not seen much of a difference. I know I've looked at the gender issues, but we do keep an eye on that to make sure that if there's anything that goes wrong. Again, it's trying to understand what the barriers are and making the workforce aware of inclusion. As I said, I think once you're in the door, then I think the inclusion is so important.
Yeah.
So to making sure that people are aware of what they do and their actions and how that affects inclusion.
Right. I appreciate that, and I hope we will have a follow-up conversation on this, because I think it's important for us to have clear protections put in place for religious minorities and other vulnerable communities, so that they are able to fully participate in every single department within this administration. And I hope that we are able to have the opportunity for us to get the answers that to the questions I'd asked in regards to family planning and how that feeds into the broader mission of your department. Thank you.
All right, there is so much to unpack there. Let's start with the first half. Did you notice what happened when Mr. Levitt from USAID tried to speak? He was trying to explain that the administration is helping women by focusing on education, on entrepreneurship, on giving girls the skills to build a livelihood. That is real empowerment, right? Teaching skills, building careers. But what does Reper Omar do? She cuts him off. She literally says, "That's all well and dandy." Can you believe the arrogance? Here is a professional trying to explain successful programs that actually help people, and she dismisses it because it doesn't fit her specific agenda about government-funded contraception. She ignores the economic reality that education is the foundation of success, just so she can score points on social issues. It was rude, it was dismissive, and frankly, it showed she wasn't interested in the answers unless they fit her script. Then we pivot to the second half, and this is where it gets really interesting. She turns to Ambassador Perez. Now, watch the shift in strategy. Omar starts listing off identity groups, asking about people with disabilities, the LGBTQ community, religious minorities. She is fishing for discrimination. She desperately wants the ambassador to say, "No, we don't care about those groups." But Ambassador Perez doesn't take the bait. She calmly explains that everyone is protected under civil rights codes. She explains the reality of the situation, that data collection is voluntary. You can't force people to check a box if they don't want to. That's called freedom, not discrimination. But here is the best part. This is the moment the narrative collapsed. Omar tries to claim that there is this massive exodus of people leaving the State Department because of perceived hostility from the Trump administration. She is relying on rumors, on anecdotes, on feelings. She says she hears people are leaving. And how does Ambassador Perez respond? Does she get angry? No. She hits her with the numbers. She says the attrition rate, the rate at which people leave, is historically low.
And then comes the moment that completely collapses the narrative. Claims are made about people leaving the State Department because of perceived hostility. No data, just anecdotes. The response? Numbers. Attrition rates are historically normal, 2% at entry level, 4% at mid-level. In other words, the mass exodus doesn't exist. This hearing shows what happens when ideology meets reality. Feelings make headlines, but facts end the argument.
2% for entry level, 4% for mid-level. Let that sink in. Omar is painting this picture of a department in chaos, where minorities are fleeing in terror because of the hostile administration, and the witness simply says, "Actually, almost nobody is leaving." That is the mic drop moment. You can have all the perceived hostility narratives you want, but you cannot argue with the data. People are staying in their jobs. They are doing the work. The chaos isn't in the State Department. The chaos is in the questioning. This hearing was a perfect example of what happens when ideology meets reality. Ilhan Omar came in with a prepared story about a hateful administration destroying the government. The witnesses came with facts, professionalism, and statistics. And in the end, the facts won. Let me know in the comments. Do you think the witnesses handled the pressure well, or was Omar right to push them? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more breakdowns of the madness in DC. I'll see you next time.